to In the News for June the 30th, the last day of June, where it's like midway through 2023. My name is Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. So, Brett, if today's the last day of June, tomorrow would be what, the first day of July? Is that what I'm hearing? So if it's the first day of July, does that mean that we should be putting on our birthday party hats? Look at my little things here, because I think that there's a birthday boy tomorrow morning.
Stinker.
Should I just wear this birthday hat? You know, this is actually not a real, this looks like a real birthday hat, but I actually created this as a volume, a 3D volume, an Apple Vision Pro developer kit. No, this is not. This is actually a real hat. And
I was going to go with you. I was going to go with you on that, Jeff. I really was.
I don't think I look silly at all. Anyone listening to the audio podcast needs to jump on YouTube to see this beautiful, beautiful hat.
That's beautiful.
So we'll keep it on for a little bit until it annoys me. So happy birthday.
I didn't know that
early.
You do. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. It's good. Well, you've got some good stuff to cover. In fact, how about Apple's new product we hadn't heard too much about, the iLaptop. All right, that's... You're going Vision Pro. I'm going to the yeah, please. That's great. So this was an excellent story. Number one, because the number one question probably that I think I get when I go around the country talking about the iPad, Jeff, for years, and you've encountered this too, is for some reason, everybody always says, hey, the iPad, this looks great. Can it replace my laptop? Yeah. And for several years there, at least initially, the answer was, well, not really. Over the last few years, it's gotten much closer, and I thought this was an excellent article. In fact, this is great, Fernando. I used to follow him on his YouTube channel. Great to see that he's in 9 to 5 Mac now. But he's went through several features in iPadOS 17 that really does even bring, make that gap much smaller. The iPad Pro can pretty much today, I think, replace your laptop, and that's great.
Yeah, I mean, you need to define the word replace, because are we saying you'll never need to touch a computer again? You'll just need your iPad, for a few folks, perhaps. But I mean, for most people, no. Certainly for professional users like, the law practice that I have, no. I mean, you need to have a computer as well. But are there times when it can replace it? And there, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, as I've mentioned in the past, whenever I travel, I was traveling last weekend, I almost never take a computer. I just take my iPad with me. And because the thing is, the iPad can get just about all of it done, and it's so much easier to travel with. It's so small and light. So, I mean, I was given presentations last week. I was, editing documents. I was annotating PDF files, and it all worked just great. Exactly. Just all from the iPad, using the Apple Pencil, and everything worked great. One of the things where the iPad works really well when you just have one thing at a time going on. But when it comes to multitasking, sometimes, especially, you feel like you don't have the power you have with the computer. And this is something that Apple is trying to address. And so, as this article points out, with the improvements to Stage Manager, you have more flexibility on where you put overlapping windows. And as I've mentioned in past weeks, for this is going to come out this fall with iPadOS 17, I'm looking forward to it, because I had high hopes for Stage Manager a year ago. And then in reality, I didn't use it because I found it too constraining. But my hope is that with this new version, I'm going to use it more. And then I think it just allows you to, be in and out of more apps at one time, as opposed to having every app take the entire full screen at once. And one more thing I'll mention that he points out in here is external webcam support. That's been one of those things that's been a problem for me, because when I'm traveling, sometimes you need to just, especially post-COVID, sometimes you need to just jump on a video conference, right? And the iPad is nice because it's a great big screen. You can see everybody else on your video podcast, but it falls flat for how you look, because the camera is to the side and to the left. And so if you're looking here at the people, and then you need to look over here to look at the camera, and it's always very awkward. So being able to pop a little portable camera and just throw it in my bag, and then just stick it on top of my iPad, much like I might do with a laptop computer, to get something better than the built-in camera. I can't wait for that. And the better solution would be for Apple to put the webcam, put the camera on the iPad in a different location along the long side as opposed to the short side. But I know that they have the electronics in there that make the Apple Pencil work right above it and stuff. So maybe there's not a lot of space. But anyway, just examples like that. Yeah, there you go. Two cameras. That's a good solution too. Yeah. So anyway, those are just some of the examples.
And this article that obviously we'll link to, Fernando Silva does a great job, I think, even in the video, kind of showing some of this. And, just exactly what you were saying with the Stage Manager. I mean, I've started really enjoying Stage Manager and iPadOS 16, and I'm thrilled that I'm going to have even more options to customize, like how big or small I want some of the windows to be. Because sometimes I do run up against that brick wall. And we've talked about this with Federico at Mac Stories, you know, that he's really looking forward to this. And that's great. But yeah, that external webcam support caught my eye too. And I was even just thinking, we've talked about that little Belkin MagSafe mount, right? You know, that we would use on maybe a laptop or something like that. Could you do that with your iPhone camera? Maybe.
Wow, that's a good question, Brett.
I don't know.
Would the iPhone be too heavy to be on top of an iPad?
I don't know.
To try that out. But that's a perfect example of the sort of things. Right. That is an excellent question. I look forward to trying that out. Good idea. Good idea.
Well, okay. So iOS 17 is going to be new, but how about something old technology in there as well? NFC, which I believe stands for Near Field Communications. And the old part here is that Apple has included a near field communication chip, an NFC chip, in their iPhone since the iPhone 6, which I don't even know how many years that is now away that was released, Jeff. But this was a great story you linked to from Dan Moren at in his further article at Macworld, where the iOS 17 is finally tapping into the iPhone 6's full potential. Little tongue-in-cheek headline there, but just the fact that we are seeing some of this now with the NFC chip, and I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah. And I mean, he's got a good point that the NFC chip's been there for a long time, and yet there hasn't been very much you could do with it. If you ever encountered an NFC tag, there are ways, often with external apps, not with built-in apps, that you could get it to trigger functions. I mean, I remember years ago, I tried that you can purchase these little cheap stickers, and you could put the sticker on something. And so I might put the sticker right here on like my coffee mug. And if I put my phone next to that sticker, I could use a third-party app. Or nowadays you could actually use shortcuts to have that launch something happen. And it was a little gimmicky. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Ultimately, I found it wasn't something I was using a lot. But the idea of being able to send information so quickly and so seamlessly between two devices when they're close to each other just makes so much sense. And so as Dan points out, the two things that are coming out this fall is, first of all, you have the name drop that if you just put two iPhones together, it will, instantly let you share contact cards, the digital version of giving somebody your business cards. And then the other one, we've talked about this too, is the vastly improved AirDrop, which AirDrop is really a great way, perhaps the best way to get a file from me to you. I mean, it's more convenient than a text message and an email. You don't have to worry about attachment size and stuff. But with the new improvements to AirDrop, NFC starts the transfer, so your devices are pretty close to each other, and you have to approve it. But then you could walk away, and you could go your way. I could go my way. You can go get on a plane, go for it somewhere else, and it will just continue the transfer using internet until it's done, however long that takes, however large the file is. And those are, I think, really, really useful features. So it's funny that it's taken Apple so long to come up with one, let alone two really good NFC features. But I guess, it's better late than never, right? I'm glad we have them.
It's one of these technologies that, again, I've known they've been around. Like, I remember they are announcing it in the iPhone 6, but it was just so far down and way outside of my peripheral vision. Like, I just never encountered it. But now that you mention it, I was just in New York this past week, and I went to a restaurant. And sometimes how the restaurants have those little stickers on the table now, Jeff, where it has a QR code. But at the top of this one, it had a QR code, but it also said, or just tap your phone here. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Sure enough, it worked. I just tapped my phone on top of that. I did not scan the QR code, but it literally launched the menu that I could order from there. And I was just sitting there. I didn't even think about it much. Number one, I'm like, it didn't say NFC anywhere on there. And I didn't even know how it worked at the time. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. I have no idea how that just launched, which kind of scared me just a little bit. But that is an area where it actually worked. And if we could get a little closer to that, maybe that makes me excited.
You know what they may have been using? I'm forgetting the particular name of it. I don't think it's web app, but Apple came up with this technology a few years ago that you can, triggering through something like NFC, you can have something load. It's not a full app that you would download from the App Store.
Okay.
It's a little miniature version of the app, certainly sophisticated enough to, for example, have a menu on it, or even let you order things quickly. And I'm forgetting the name of the technology.
You could be right, because it didn't open into the browser. It was like a little sandboxed kind of an area that I was in.
Yeah, that may have been what it was, but I haven't seen it a lot. I get the sense that Apple wanted to get NFC on iPhones because, of course, it's the backbone for Apple Pay, which is, fantastic, and I use all the time. But you sort of get the sense that, like, once they had Apple Pay settled, and Apple Pay is great, don't get me wrong, but like they just never really looked for other ways to take advantage of NFC until now. So it's great because I think there's lots of cool things that you can do with it. You just need to be creative, and it's great to see this.
I'll tell you one other place that, okay, so maybe the restaurant, maybe that have been NFC or not. I'm not really sure, but I will tell you the one place that I have actually seen bona fide NFC. We got our new Subaru Outback, Jeff.
Okay.
And, I'm playing, it's got a very beautiful, huge screen, kind of like a vertical screen, right? So we can connect to CarPlay via Bluetooth, right? So, you have to go into the menu and you have to set that. Well, on the side of this screen, Jeff, there was a little odd looking logo. It looked like an N. It was like two arrows, and it almost to me looked like an Nespresso logo. Huh. And I'm thinking, okay, well, the Subaru I don't think can make me coffee. That'd be great if I could make me an espresso. So honestly, Jeff, I had to look it up, and you know what that was? That is the logo for NFC. And the reason
I'm not even
that
sure I would recognize that. Yeah,
I didn't. That's what I'm saying. Like, I knew the only reason that I knew that was a bona fide instance of it is because I had to look it up. Like, what is the N symbol on my Subaru Outback? I Googled it, and sure enough, it's NFC. So here's what it's used for, Jeff. You can connect, go through the menu and connect in through Bluetooth on your iPhone, or you just simply tap your phone right there where that little NFC chip is located, and then it connects for you automatically. In other words, it was like a shortcut, to doing a connection on Bluetooth. So anyway, I just wanted to say, again, it was so far out of, like, I didn't even have a clue what that little logo was, but I was glad that I was able to find it. And things like that, if we can see a little bit more implementation and obviously it's not just Apple, but it's all of the other manufacturers, right, to put in these chips, that can be important on there.
Yeah, I just did a Google search and I see the icon that you're talking about.
Right.
Brett, if I have ever seen that before in my life, I've completely forgotten. I had no idea what that was.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Okay, well, NFC, but I'm glad that you linked to that today. Well, here's another app that I got to tell you, I started using almost every day, the Notes app on my phone. We've talked about this many, many, many times. I use the Notes app as just a place to capture a thought or a quick list of any kind, or, even things that I might want to share between my iPhone and my iPad, a research or a copy of some text, that kind of a thing. This is a great list from Lance Whitney at PC Magazine, 15 things you didn't realize Apple's Notes app could do. I found, I think, 2 in here that I didn't really remember as well.
Oh, I found like almost 14 or 15 now. It seems like it. The thing is, we were excited in the last couple of weeks about some of the improvements to Notes that are coming out this fall, like the ability to link from one note to another and all the PDF things. But the reality is, Notes is an app that I use all the time, but I feel like I don't keep up with the new features, because as I was looking through here about some of the things, just for example, you can organize your notes into folders. And, I do it a little bit, but after reading this article and realizing that you can have folders and subfolders and stuff like that, I have to admit, I just have one big ugly list, and I don't really organize it that well. And the reality is, I know that I can always search for things at the top, but I'll be honest with you, it's not always perfect to search for notes. If I took the time, maybe one of these days when I'm like, on an airplane and have some downtime or something like that, I should organize my notes and my folders, because I think I could be more efficient. And another feature that he points out in here, which is not brand new, but it is the idea that you can use hashtags in notes. And I've known that this is a feature. Do you use this right now, Brett, in your notes?
I just barely. I got to tell you, I don't use it a whole lot, but a couple of times, if I copy something from an email, in the title of the note, I would put hashtag email, and sure enough, it would do exactly what you're describing.
And it works great. So, to do it, you put the hashtag first, the little pound symbol, and then you type a word. And then here's something that I didn't understand, even from the directions that were in the article you're talking about. When you type the word, like, for example, let's say I put hashtag and then I put Apple. Okay, that's not enough. You need to do one last step, which is after you type the word Apple, how right above the keyboard where you have your word suggestions, it will have, I think you said Apple, but maybe you meant this. Or maybe if you put something that's a misspelling of a word, like maybe if you use the stock symbol AAPL, it won't be a real word. So it'll be on the left side to tell you, like, do you actually want to type it this way? But you need to tap one of those things just above the keyboard right after you type the pound sign. And when you do it in your note, you will actually see whatever you did, like, hashtag AAPL or Apple, but it'll be orange, I think it is, or whatever your highlight color is.
Exactly.
And then then you know that it's an actual tag. And so you can go into a bunch of your other notes and put the actual tags in there too. And once you've done it for like a group of notes, it's sort of like all of the advantages of having a folder without actually physically moving them into a folder. Because when you're at the top level of notes, one of the things that you can see as a way to sort them by is by hashtags. And it'll suggest some popular hashtags. And then another selection is to everything that has a hashtag, but it can be a quick way to find specifically what you're looking for just because you took the time to put a hashtag in it way back when. And so, I mean, those are two examples of, are these brand new? Absolutely not. But I know for a fact that I am not taking full advantage of them, even though as I sit here and think about it, I'm like, this would actually be useful for me. So it's a great reminder that Notes is a very powerful app. You just need to, remember stuff, all the different things you can do.
I find that I have this balance between I want Notes to do more, but I like the simplicity of it right now.
That's fair point.
He talks about change text formatting, and I like this, right? I love making things bold and some highlighted and underlined, and most of the basics are there, and that's great. But sometimes I'm like, oh no, I want to change like the shape of my bullet list, know? And it's like, wait a minute, no. If I want to do that, maybe I'll go into Word, right? Like Notes isn't the place to do that kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, I use this all the time, even from just scanning things. Like I've got one note in here that is, all of my different coffees that I've tried, and I take pictures of the coffee bag, that kind of a thing, and, just make a little note on there. I mean, it's just a great place to capture that. We've talked about the Drafts app before. And in some cases, I keep thinking to myself, maybe I should be using that instead. But the Notes is just so easy, and it synchronizes so well. I mean, the Drafts app is fantastic. I love that app. And sometimes I'll go in and I'll save things in there. But, I even use the Notes app just quickly to let you know, Jeff, that like if I want to reply to somebody on a text message, but I don't have the time to finish it, or, I want to dictate it, but then I want to go back and fix it and correct it, I'll do that in the Notes app first. And then copy and paste over into text message or an email or something like that. And I know people are thinking, well, that's a little bit of work, but for me, it doesn't mean that. Just means I don't inadvertently like hit send before I'm ready, that kind of a thing.
I literally was using that trick yesterday when I was putting together. Normally my text message is not that long, but I wanted to put some details in there, and like you, I was afraid I was going to hit send before it was ready, and so I just wanted to compose it somewhere else, get it like I wanted it, and then I knew when it was ready to send it, you could send it. One mention thing, you mentioned the fact that you can put attachments, and it's really powerful that you can like embed images and stuff like that with the Notes. One of the things that this article pointed out that I didn't even realize you could do is that when you get to the main screen of Notes, at the very top right, there's a circle with the 3 dots in it. And if you tap that, you get a bunch of menus of things like new ways to sort your notes and everything else. But one of them is to just view attachments. So if there is like an image or a file that you attached it to a note, and right now you just can't remember what particular note that was, like, what did you call it? That's fine. You can just say view attachments. You'll see all your attachments and you're like, oh, that's the one I'm looking for. And you can go there and then go specifically to the note. So it's just another way to get at your information. Just really powerful stuff. The Notes team at Apple is just hitting it out of the park. They're doing a great job.
Agreed. I am glad to know that you're doing better after your recent surgery. Nothing major, it sounds like, but it's the Achilles heel on that. But your Apple Watch, I don't think has been very happy with you, Jeff, in that you haven't been standing up and walking around as much. This was a great piece that you talked about here. And I'm glad that Dan Moren also agrees with you. Like, you know what, Apple Watch? There might be some times that I can't get up and walk around, and you just need to calm down a little bit. Don't tell me I got to get up and walk around. We'll see how this goes. I mean, I can see both sides of it. It's simple. The Apple Watch, they're talking about the fact that they want 100% streak, right? And if you don't do it, they're going to encourage you to get up and keep moving. But on the other hand, there's some times that people just can't do that all the time.
Everyone gets encouragement in different ways. I know people that say that the reason that they use a personal trainer when they go to the gym is because that, having that other person there is, it makes them feel accountable, and it pushes them to do more than perhaps they would. Everybody has to find their way of doing it. And I found that when I was trying to complete my circles every day, just to keep the silly streak of it's been this many days that you've made all your green circles today, there was definitely those days when I wasn't necessarily going to jump on the treadmill or whatever else, but I was like, you know what, I have this super long streak. Let me just do it and get it over with. And for me, I mean, I know it's just gamification and stuff like that, but I found it to be encouraging. On the other hand, sometimes it's like the end of the day, it's a Friday night, you know, I'm going out with friends. It's like, there's no way in the world I am going to do my 30 minutes today, but, or maybe even just the last 15 minutes, whatever I need to close the circle. But like, I hate to destroy the streak, because starting on Saturday and Sunday and on Monday and Tuesday, having that long streak is what's going to encourage me to be active.
Right.
And so, you know, you should totally have the ability to give yourself a pass. And I understand the logic of someone else saying, oh, well, if you give yourself a pass for the day, it's not a real streak. To which my response is, who cares?
Yeah,
it doesn't. I mean, no one else in the world needs to know whether I'm having a streak or not.
Right.
Brett, you're actually one of the few people that I actually share my activity goals with. So
Same
like
with
you
yeah.
and like one or two other people would even know whether or not I have a streak or don't have a streak. But it's like, what it's just, you're just playing games with yourself and your own brain.
Right.
So if you decide that for you, a streak means 5 days a week, not 7 days a week, if that's going to be enough to encourage you to be more active, go for it. You know, why does it matter if your definition of a streak is different from someone else's definition? So I really think I'm surprised. To me, this is so obvious that I don't understand. The Apple Watch has been around so long. I don't understand why Apple hasn't done it. And I will tell you, I mean, what I would do to try to work around it is if I knew that there was a day I just wasn't going to work out, I would just go into my Apple Watch and just start. I like there's some generic workouts that are just called like open goal. You know, there's no particular thing. And I would just start it and I just let it run. And it runs for my 22 minutes, enough for me to get the full 30 minutes that I need. And then I just turn it off. And it's silly. It's ridiculous that you need to even do that sort of thing. But that would mean that my 400-day streak would be 401, which is going to give me the incentive on days 402, 403, 404, 405, 46. So Apple needs to rethink this. Absolutely.
I feel like I don't know if this is even possible today, but I remember back in the day when this first started coming out, people would be just sitting on the couch and they would just like shake their hand back and forth, right? While they're watching, they would just
shake absolutely 10 minutes before the hour when you want to get the stand hour. Absolutely. Yeah.
You got to get that. You know, the reason that I was looking at one of the reasons I looked at the story, my wife has said for several, a couple of years now, we just got her a brand new Apple Watch. I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but she feels the same way, at least in the sense that like on Sundays, right? Typically on Sundays, we rest a little bit more, like we don't go out and do a whole lot, and we certainly don't go out and exercise. But the Apple Watch is still encouraging you to get out there and work. And usually towards the end of the day, you know, Jeff, it comes up with a message like that. Hey, you can still do it. Like you can still walk for, 20 minutes and get that ring. And my wife has always said, there should be a Sabbath setting on the watch. So like you can just tell the watch, hey, you know what? Today I'm just going to take it easy, right? And the watch should be able to be compliant and be like, okay, you're all right. You're not going to get your rings, but okay, we'll let you be. Anyway, it was I just hadn't thought about it in the comprehensive sense that you link to this story here, Jeff. So thanks for doing that. And yeah, we'll see what Apple's going to do on that, because I think in the interest of like well-being and, self-awareness, that kind of thing that they're always kind of harping on there, I think that's pretty important. You got to know when it's time to, take a break on there sometimes. All right. We talked about some of the tips with the Notes app that may be a little bit hidden. You didn't really know about. This is a neat article you link to. 7 things hiding in your phone's app icons you probably haven't noticed yet. I think, what did he have? 7 things? I probably knew about 2 of these 7 things. And the others, my jaw dropped on the table, Jeff. Thanks for linking to this today.
This is fun. I mean, the one that I think most people know is that if you put the calendar, Apple's built-in calendar app, it will show the today's date. And so that's the reason that I usually keep it in my dock, because it's a convenient way just to glance down and see what day is today, which is really nice. But this article collects a bunch of other ones. And let me begin by saying that only Apple apps can change what the icon looks like so dynamically that it can take advantages. I actually think it would be an interesting idea if Apple opened this up to third-party developers. Third-party developers can reapply a new icon. So like some apps will offer, 10 different icons. You can choose, do you want it to be blue or orange, whatever, but it doesn't do this dynamically changing in the background. So he points out, for example, that the clock app, it actually changes the clock hands throughout the day. So it shows you the current time. That's one you may have noticed. But there's one down here, the last one I had never seen this one before, that there's an app called Voice Memos, which you can use to just record a voice recording. And, the icon has like the up and down lines of what it would look like
waveform.
for a waveform. Right. And what this person figured out, or he read from before, is that if you say the word Apple, the waveform of the word Apple matches what is on the icon. And I'm like, that's pretty clever. I you know, brilliant. Whoever thought about it, that's like one of those brilliant Easter eggs that you would never know about. And then once you see it, you probably can't unsee it. So so anyway, there's some other fun ones in here, but
that one's great.
It would be cool if there were even more things that, you know, you could have more interactive apps, whether it be from first party apps from Apple or from third parties. But it's cute that people took the time to do it. One of the things in here that people have often talked about is the Maps app. Yes. Shows you historically, it used to show you the location of the original Apple campus, which is at number one Infinite Loop in Cupertino. Right. And then they recently changed it to the current what we all call the spaceship, the Apple Park campus is located. But that's the sort of thing that most people would never even pay attention to what was shown in that Maps icon. So it's cute little Easter egg things.
My favorite, the flashlight icon. You know, this is the one that's on your lock screen. And so many people use this all the time. I use it constantly. So when you tap it, you know, it's usually like a black background. And when you tap it, and, you know, usually hold and tap to turn it on, the background turns white. What I did not know is that the little tiny switch on the little icon of the flashlight changes as well. Like it toggles on. I did not know this. I thought, so anyway, that blew my mind this morning. I'm like, what? Like, that's so silly and so unnecessary. Nobody should have had to require to do that, but it's just so a neat thing. And I use that flashlight icon all the time. And that was one of my favorites on there. I like it.
I have a different way of telling when my flashlight is on my iPhone. It's yes. When my wife or my kids say, "Hey, Jeff, your iPhone's in your pocket, and there's a light coming out of your pocket." And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." Because I use it I use it all the time, but sometimes I forget it's on, or I think I turned it off and I didn't turn it off, and next thing that you know, my pants pocket's got like a light coming out of it. And,
right. Ugh. You're just a shining personality, Jeff. That's
there you go. There you go.
Let's do some HomeKit. We haven't talked about some of the home automation in a while, so I've missed it, and I'm glad you linked to HomeKit Weekly. This is you've linked to Bradley Chambers at 9 to 5.
Yeah, he talks about HomeKit stuff all the time. Yeah,
and I like it. Apparently, it's a feature. HomeKit Weekly. So this was, I got to be honest, I did not know the WiZ light bulbs were a thing, but I am telling you, I might be purchasing them in the next week or so. I haven't invested a whole lot in the HomeKit, the home automation thing. I've got maybe a couple of light bulbs, but this one, I'm really interested in the WiZ, WiZ, WiZ light bulbs gaining Matter support now, not just HomeKit, but also Matter support. And Bradley says it's a huge win for Apple.
Yeah, and this is the key. You know, I've seen this brand of light bulbs and accessories for a while, and they look to be, you know, powerful and lower cost, but they've never been compatible with HomeKit. And I don't know if that's because of the licensing fees that Apple charges for that or what. Right. But now that we have the open standard of Matter, more and more of these devices, even the less expensive ones, are supporting Matter. And since Apple supports Matter too, you can do it. And I mean, for folks watching in the video, I mean, there's a couple of different interesting bulbs they have. Wow. They have just a bulb that just goes on and off. They've got a bulb that, you know, you can change the intensity of it. They've got one that can change color. They've got the one, I'm forgetting the name of it. It's the first one you have in your screen right now. It's a special type of bulb. We have some in our house too. It's sort of an old timey bulb where you can see the filaments. In this case, it's fake filaments. Yeah. There's a name for those that I'm forgetting as I'm sitting here, but they have some interesting offerings. And so if they work with Matter, and if your devices can support Matter, as Apple now does, you just have a lot more flexibility, which is really nice. I will tell you though, just as maybe not a warning, but just something to keep in mind, if you're going to buy a light bulb that is controllable, just keep in mind that LED light bulbs have a relatively long light pattern, lifespan, but eventually they'll go out and you have to replace it. And that's one downside. And then another downside, and this is perhaps the bigger one, is that in order to take advantage of it, you need to keep the light switch always in the on position, which means that you'll forever control that light bulb just using your app. And if you're the only one in your house, that's fine. But if you have other people in your house, unless they're using the app, they may find it annoying that they can't use the light switch. And if they do use the light switch and turn off the bulb, then you can't control it. And so and I've mentioned this before. I mean, the number one solution that I recommend for this is for HomeKit lights is to use the Lutron lights, Lutron Cassetta specifically, because the Lutron lights, instead of changing it at the bulb level, you're changing it at the switch level. And it's a normal wall switch that anybody they don't have to know diddly squat about technology. They can just press the buttons on the wall to make the light come on and off. So they don't need to have a special app. But then if you do have the app, or if you have HomeKit stuff, you can control the lights. Now, having said that, that's just for turning lights on and off and dimming. That's not going to help you if you want to have a light that changes color, and which is a sort of a cool thing to have the light change color. So if you do want to have that, then you'll just have to keep the light in the on switch all the time. So, but big story here is I want to see more of this. I want to see more and more third parties, more variety, and that because there's now an open standard of Matter, we can do more on our Apple devices, even if it doesn't technically support HomeKit.
One quick story on Vision Pro, I promise, just one, because we'll be talking about this a lot more, from Bryn Lovejoy, which honestly, this story just convinced me completely, Jeff, that I don't want to use any other devices that I can't see through, because he links to a little video in here of fails that a lot of people have gone if they have other visors or other components that they have been using here that you can't see through, and it doesn't work out very well for these folks a lot of times. And anyway, the story really goes into, you can explain a little bit more about how the Vision Pro is addressing this, because while you can't see through the Vision Pro, the headset that Apple has really done a good job, it sounds like, of using the cameras on the outside to make sure that you feel like you're in the physical room, so that you just don't run into a wall or kick your television when you're trying to box with the bad guys or something.
Yeah, there are so many examples on YouTube, and as you mentioned, some of them are collected in this compilation video of somebody that has, whether it's an Oculus Quest or whether it's got the PlayStation, but because this headset's on them and they're completely immersed in a virtual world where they think they are boxing or climbing up mountains or whatever they're doing, you just lose track of where you are in the outside world. The next thing you know, you've put your fist through the television set and cracked your TV, or you've gone through the sliding glass. Horrible situations. And so the way that Apple is addressing this is they sort of have three modes for the Apple Vision Pro. One mode is the one where the cameras are being used so that you actually see the outside world being reproduced. So if there's a coffee table or a wall, you see the coffee table on the wall in the headset exactly where it is. You just happen to see a window, next to it or inside of it that you can work around. So that's sort of the full augmented reality mode. And then there's sort of a middle ground where you see a little bit of the world around you and a little bit not so much. And Apple makes it so that you see enough of the world around you to keep safe. If a person gets close to you, they will suddenly appear within your screen. It's like they just sort of show up in there so that you don't not see them. And then, but the point of this story is that Apple does have a complete VR mode, so that everywhere you look around you, you're transported to another world or another environment or whatever it is. And that's the mode that the other headsets currently mimic, typically, where you really can't see the fact that there is a couch in front of you or that there's a person to your left. And so what Apple has said is that when you're in that mode, you're limited to moving 5 feet in each direction. So think of it as like a 10 by 10 square. So the mode is really designed for if you're just sort of staying still, maybe sitting on a couch looking around you. But if you start moving around too much, you don't have to go very far before Apple just switches from the full VR mode over to the AR mode so that you can see the world around you and try to make sure that you don't get yourself into trouble. This is a perfect example of how, Apple has such a history of not being the first to the market. They didn't create the first iPhone. They didn't create the first this and that, the first tablet, but they took a look at what was out in the market already. The first MP3 player, when they came out with the iPod, they took a look at what was out there. They figured out what worked, what didn't work. I remember when the first iPod came out, existing MP3 players held very, very few songs and they were big. And so they said, those are the problems we need to solve for. We need something that can be small to fit in your pocket, but we need to hold lots of songs. And the innovation there was being the first device to use a super, super small hard drive. And so likewise with the Vision Pro, Apple's saying the same thing. We can see the problems with the existing products even though those existing products are very different from ours, let's try to plan for them in the future. So that's smart, because, you know, Apple doesn't want to have a bunch of YouTube videos of people wearing the Apple Vision Pro, you know, walking into objects and knocking over lamps and everything else.
Right. I could be mistaken, but I thought I saw, I don't think that you linked to anything about this, but the Vision OS, the operating system for the Vision Pro, I think was released to a select number of developers this past week.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, that for me, number one, somebody I think was saying, well, that usually means at that point that the hardware is pretty well gelled, right? In other words, Apple is pretty confident in the hardware, and now they're releasing the Vision OS, which right now obviously people can't use on the Vision OS. I think it's like an iPad simulator or something like that, right? That they can use it on. But just to get this into the hands of developers so they can start playing around with at least the constructs of it. So by the time that we do finally see that somebody can, you know, shell out $3,500 for the Vision Pro, then there's already theoretically going to be some apps or some functionality, right, that people can take advantage of. So just the fact that it was that quick that people were able to get Vision OS, or at least, you know, the basics of it, is kind of encouraging to me. And I was just glad to hear that today.
I completely agree. I mean, this product's going to come out, they say early next year, which I could mean as late as May, probably would still count as early. So they've got, you know, between January and May of next year, they have lots of time, and developers can start now. You're not wearing the actual goggles yet. You're just looking at a simulation on the screen, but you can start to try out some of your apps and see how it works. And Apple has already announced that they're having select locations around the world that you will be able as a developer to go to places, not just Cupertino, but also like London and Tokyo, and actually try out the real hardware, see how your app runs with it. You know, I'm sure some folks, once they actually try something for real, like, oh, I never realized when I was doing the simulation, just looking at it on my monitor, that this is how this works. Now I can go back and tweak it. But yeah, I think Apple's hoping that there's going to be some good, solid third-party Apple apps available for when the device comes out next year.
Time for our Where You At segment. This is a
Where
good one yet again. Apparently this was in California. I'm not sure if it was Southern California.
Los Angeles area, yeah.
Okay, good. Los Angeles area. So a hiker was going along the trail. Apparently some part of the trail fell out from under her. She fell, broke her leg, did not have cell phone coverage, but she did have the iPhone 14. And I love the quote in here. I didn't even know how it worked, but I was able to connect with law enforcement, with emergency personnel through the SOS feature. And I think that's just a testimony to how nice the feature was actually baked into the iPhone 14 and how important this is going to continue to be. This won't be the last story by any stretch.
Yeah, I get the sense that she may have been by herself, which would be really dangerous if you break your foot and you're by yourself. I mean, there's nobody there to help you. Fortunately, she was able to call the help. And there's even a video here where you can actually see they picked her up with a helicopter, like, you know, that long string that sort of lifts her up with to the helicopter to get her to safety. But there was also a quote in here where the LA County officials were saying that this is I forget the number, like the 11th time that they have rescued somebody using this. And so, you know, you and I may not be here we go, that's right there, the iPhone 14. Oh, it wasn't there, it was somewhere else, but anyway, I think they said it was the 11th time. And you know, just because I'm not using this to be rescued, and you, Brett, I don't think have used it to be rescued, there are absolutely people out there that are taking advantage of this in what could potentially be dire situations. And I'm sure that, you know, when you're in that situation and you suddenly realize that this is the difference between you getting help and you being out in the cold, that's pretty impressive.
My favorite part of the story is apparently one of the first responders wanted to take a picture of the responders and the lady with her iPhone.
I thought that was funny.
Is this the new selfie, Jeff? It's like, hey, you know, I'm injured and halfway to death, but let's get a selfie real quick to show that the iPhone saved me. Hey, you know, if you've got time to do that, you could do that. But it's like, she's even smiling. The hiker is smiling in this picture, holding her iPhone and saying, hey, yes, I'm safe. Now, she's got her leg bandaged up, thank goodness. But, you know, it's just kind of funny. It's like, hey, you need to get a selfie with the first responders. You know, we'll make sure that we get it targeted. Anyway, that's really good. All right, so now let's go to In the Know. Couple of tips. I mentioned that we just recently got my wife, Jeff, an Apple Watch 8. I think she was on a 3 for a long time, and bless her heart, she was trying to go along with it, and it was still working okay. But she's wanting to get a little bit more into some of the fitness things, and we used to challenge each other. We couldn't really do that. There was something that wasn't messed up, or I don't think she could upgrade that Apple Watch. Whatever it was, I wanted to encourage her with it, so we got her a brand new watch on there. Well, one of the things that she wanted to test out that I've known about for a long time, but I've never really focused on too much, is she wanted to track her sleep. Some nights she was sleeping good, and other nights it wasn't so good, but she just wanted something simple to be able to say, how much REM sleep did I get versus, deep sleep or the core sleep, that kind of a thing. How often did I wake up in the night? Now, I have typically not worn my Apple Watch at night, but she wanted to start doing this. Apple Watch 8, one of the big things, obviously, it had much better battery so that she could, right? She could wear it overnight and then just, charge it in the morning, maybe when she was taking a shower or something, and that would be enough for the full day. Well, she kept talking about this, so I'm like, well, doggone it, I'm going to try this a little bit more too. Like, I know I've got this, and I've got my Apple Watch Ultra. Well, I got to tell you, I know I set up a sleep focus a long time ago because there's a few things you got to do. First, you got to have the Apple Watch, right? And you have to set up the sleep mode or a sleep goal in the health app on the iPhone. Now, I may not have all of the steps here, but I think one of the reasons that I kind of turned off from it, Jeff, is just there was a lot of steps here. You got to go into the health app, you set up your sleep mode or your sleep focus. Well, then you've got to make sure that your Apple Watch will go into that sleep mode. So you set a sleep schedule on your iPhone. I mean, already I'm kind of getting overwhelmed with how many steps here. But theoretically, what happens at the end of the day when you set your time, like mine's at 10 p.m. at night, my Apple Watch goes into sleep mode. My health app, my phone is sitting on my bedside table. And while that is going on, then my watch is literally tracking the different stages of my sleep. Now, I've really not paid attention of this. And the health app does go into a little bit of explanation and some definitions about the different stages of sleep. Now, all that to say, there are other apps out there that will probably do a much better job at being very particular on what they're tracking in your sleep schedule. But, I don't need that all the time. Like, I just want to get a general idea, like how long was I asleep? Did I wake up to have to go to the restroom in the middle of the night? And it shows on that. I got to tell you, it looks pretty accurate, just for like a normal person like me, that I don't need to do, I don't need every single, exacting minute. But I do want to know, I did about an hour and a half of like really deep sleep, right? As opposed to the REM sleep and the core sleep on there. And it's just kind of nice that it'll continue to track it. As it goes through. The other last thing quickly on this, if you do set a sleep schedule, you can say that you want it to sound an alarm at the end of this sleep cycle. And I got to tell you, there are some specific alarms in there, Jeff, that are not available in the regular alarm clock. And I really kind of like them. Yeah, I like them a little bit more. I mean, as far as I can tell, they're only available when you set up this sleep schedule. And they're really nice because they start off kind of nice and easy, and then they get louder and louder and grow a little bit. Maybe somebody can let me know if there's available in a different way, but in the regular setting alarm, you can't get access to these. They're only available in this sleep schedule. So sort of it's a kind of a big overall tip on there. Just consider tracking your sleep. If nothing else, just FYI, right? Just so that you have a general idea of how long you were in REM sleep versus deep sleep. And you can do this, go into your health app on your iPhone, set up a sleep schedule. If you've got an Apple Watch that will track this, that goes into a sleep mode, which is really nice because it's not very bright at the, during the night when you're moving your arms, that kind of a thing. It does it to where you have to tap it to actually get the time on there on your Apple Watch. And then, as you do this over several days, you can see that the health app will even track this and tell you, how many hours average over the week that you've got your sleep, that kind of a thing. So anyway, sleep schedules on the iPhone and the Apple Watch. My tip for the day.
That's a good one. So my tip of the day, and it's inspired by some posts from Jason Snell from earlier this week, is just a reminder of how to organize your home screens on your iPhone or your iPad.
Ooh,
I suspect that everybody knows that if you hold a finger down on an icon, it gets into that jiggy mode and you can drag a specific icon around. And that's good. But there's a lot more that you can do that folks may not know about. First of all, I'll tell you, just to build upon what I just mentioned, if you're in the icons in the jiggy mode and you start to move one icon around, you don't have to limit yourself to moving one icon at a time. While you have one icon selected with one hand, you can tap. Sometimes it's helpful to use your other hand for this. You can tap a second icon, a third icon, a fourth icon, as many as you want, and they will all sort of bunch up into the group. And so instead of moving one icon from one screen to another, you are moving 4 or 5, and that just saves you a lot of time moving around. Second of all, when you're moving around, most people know that if you sort of move your finger to the left edge of the screen or to the right edge of the screen and you hover for a second, it will open up the next page, and then you can go to the edge of the screen and hover, and then it will open the next page and then edge of the screen. And if you want to move it a bunch of different screens, it could take a while. But while you have your one finger with all the icons, whether it's one icon or multiple icons, you can actually use your second finger just to swipe between pages very quickly. And so you can, if you wanted to move things over 4 or 5 home screens, use your second finger to move things over. And that's great. So my next tip is, so now you've got them organized. I mean, the reality of it is, you probably only have a certain number of apps that you use regularly. Do you really want to take the time to organize all 100 apps that you don't use but once in a blue moon? And so what I would say is no. What I would recommend that you do is limit the number of home screens that you have on your iPhone and your iPad. And you can do that by on your iPhone or iPad. Once you get sort of into the jiggy mode, there's a at the very bottom of the screen, there's like a series of dots that you can tap. And when you bring that up, it will show you all of the different home screens that you have of apps. And you can, so like the first 2, you probably know well, because those are probably your most used apps. But once you get to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th screen, those are you probably never even really go to those screens. And so what you can do is you can just tap underneath them to turn them off. They haven't gone away. They're just not being displayed. And so let's, for example, you leave your first 2 home screens there and then turn off all the rest of them. What that means is that when you're on your iPhone or your iPad, you'll see your first home screen, swipe, you'll see your second home screen, swipe. And because you've turned the other ones off, it will then go to the app library, which is a very nice area. It's sort of like the default last screen where Apple organizes your apps in a way that Apple thinks makes sense. They put together games, they put together utilities. It may not always be the same way that you organize apps, but it doesn't really matter, because chances are you're not going to pay terribly much attention to the organization. Just go to the top and just start to type the name of the app, or you could just tap in there and you can list them all by name, and you could scroll around if you can't remember the precise name. But you can, find things in the app library. But unless it's something that you use a lot, you probably don't need to actually have it on a dedicated spot on your home screen. So I mean, those are some tips that I use. Figure out how many home screens you really need and keep them organized. And if you want to put folders on there, that's fine too. But then everything else, just turn off those screens, rely upon the app library. One last tip on this. Now, this is getting into something that's a little advanced and geeky, but it's something that I used last week, and so I'll share it with you. So I was giving a presentation to a bunch of other lawyers last week, and most of my presentation was in Keynote, but I was talking about artificial intelligence, the next generation of it, like ChatGPT and stuff. So there were going to be times during my presentation when I was going to get out of my Keynote presentation and then go into the Safari web browser and then actually use the ChatGPT web page or some other web pages to actually do some live internet searches. So when I went from one to the other, I would be exiting Keynote and going back to my home screen. And as I've mentioned to you before, Brett, my first page of my home screen, it has no icons on it. It's all like control panel. It's information for me. It's got like my to-do list. It's got like, recent documents that I've used. It's widgets, and it's widgets that I find useful, which for me is terribly useful. But if I'm doing a presentation to 100 other attorneys, I don't necessarily want them to see my to-do list, right? So what I did was that trick that I told you before about turning on and off individual screens. I went in and I turned off all of my screens on my iPad except for one. I created one special screen, and that was going to be, because it was the only one that I had enabled, it was the one that was going to be displayed when I got out of Keynote and I showed it.
Okay.
Now, ideally, what I wanted was that screen to be completely blank, but you can't have a screen with nothing on it at all. So instead, what I did is my iPad has just a sort of a blue background on it. It's not a pattern, it's just the color blue. It's a nice
Okay.
blue. And so I took a picture of the blue. So, I mean, imagine having a picture in your photo library that just has the exact same blue as the background, and then put it in my photo app. And then I used the app that you're showing on the screen, WidgetSmith. And I told WidgetSmith, I want to create a special widget that shows a specific picture. And the specific picture I want to show is the exact same background, that blue background. And so when I told WidgetSmith to put that in the top left corner, it wasn't a blank screen. There was one thing on the screen. Now, it happened to be the color blue on top of the color blue, so it's invisible. You don't see anything.
Look at you.
And then after I did that, I'm like, you know what? Because I'm giving a presentation, it might be nice to have my law firm logo as the one thing on the screen. So what I then did is I made another picture of just my law firm logo against that same blue background. And so I went back, and on this one custom screen, I think on my iPad, there were 3 spaces at the top. So I had 3 blank ones. And then the 4th one, which was in the next row, was another blank one. But then the 5th one, which would be pretty much in the middle of the screen, that was my logo. And so the end result is that when I went to my home screen, all the audience saw was what looked to be a completely blank blue screen. They're not seeing any of my widgets. They're not seeing any of my apps. And they just saw my law firm logo up there, as if that was the only thing on my desktop, which of course was fake, because the iPad won't actually let you do that. But it was using the same techniques that I just talked about as a way to sort of fake it and make it plain. And so then once my presentation is over, I can go back into all of my screens, turn off that fake background that's blank, turn on the other ones that I use, but I still have that fake background. So if I give another presentation, 2 months from now, all the work's done. I just turn that one on, turn the other ones off, and I'm ready to go. So from simple to complicated, there's some little tricks for manipulating your home screen.
I like that. I like it, and I will definitely steal it. That is fantastic. That is great. All right, Jeff. Well, thank you. Wow, this is good. We had a lot to talk about today. Okay, thanks for the
we'll put the hat back on for the end of the presentation.
The birthday hat. Yeah. Well, thanks as always for joining me and talking about the latest technology and stories, Jeff, and we'll talk with you next week.
Happy birthday, Brett. Have a great one tomorrow, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.